Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
She Blaze.
And I am Deshita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis.
Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, we learn if celebrity endorsements bring in cannabis cash. Nevada has finally released their consumption lounge regulations, and California is trying to roll back on their cannabis taxes, and we are going to break down what that really means.
Does it mean anything? I'm sorry.
It's one of those days.
It is one of those days. But of course, we have to kick things off with the high of the week. And I am kicking things off with my high of the week, which was going back to the African Street Festival. I haven't been to the African Street Festival, which is officially the annual International African Arts Festival in Brooklyn, New York, known best to folks like myself as just the African Street Festival. Happens every summer, and I've been going since I was a little girl, and I haven't been in like over a decade at least. Wow. It moved to a whole different park. Like when I went, it was at Boys and Girls, and it was always the highlight of the season, mainly because one, I got to perform, our church was involved, our mom was involved, most of the Afrocentric things that were happening in Brooklyn all collided in one spot. And then of course you have great things to buy. So I have to shout this out. I don't even know what vendor I got it from, but there were so many other many vendors that had beautiful jewelry like this one here. You can see the fro and the lips, and $5.
Okay, I know that's right.
Listen,
definitely super.
Can't complain about that.
I'm sorry, I'm not that excited because everybody went and didn't say anything. So it's like,
oh,
great.
You were hanging out.
No, I wasn't.
We were being old folks.
You know what? We're gonna talk about this offline because it's in my feelings on the subject. We have talked about it. So my high of the week is the CRC's letter to the DOJ. We talked about this last week. We talked about, or the week before, because last week was the holiday. But last time we was on here, we was talking about the feds, all the smoke they was given and all these alarms and stuff. And like all this smoke just for the DOJ not to even do the bare minimum. So, CRCC held everybody's feet to the fire, sent a letter, but knowing them they could do the basic necessities like put back the Cole memo or, improve it, right? Make it to where it is right now with all these states that are now legalized, because that also happened when there wasn't much legalization. And these are baby steps that we could do to actually protect the cannabis industry. And guess who ain't got to do it? Congress. Like, why is everybody hoping Congress do everything?
Or the president of the United States.
The president, right.
Well, you're right. I mean, I signed the letter. I helped formulate it. So I totally support it. Thank you for making it a high of the week. It is exciting to work with people, other regulators who know we got to fix this and know that there are things that legally could be done that just aren't being done. And the Cole memo being rescinded by the previous president's first attorney general, Sessions. It never got put back in place after that. Right. So it's kind of like.
Right. And we see that there are even more cannabis eradications and suppressions happening within the different agencies. And so it's just not given right now. And so they could do the bare minimum and just add in things that we had before, back when this colors made a little bit more sense.
I agree with you.
And as we talk about the colors making more sense, y'all will see on our hot topic. So let's go into our first hot topic, which is basically asking a true question about cannabis and celebrities. Like, are cannabis celebrities, or just celebrities in general, are they helping build cannabis brand awareness? Are they helping build brand influence? Are they helping cannabis cash? We know we doling out a lot of money. We see Snoop Dogg, the Martha Stewarts, and all the athletes of the world, but does that translate into your pockets?
I hope it doesn't. I mean, here's the thing. I know that we're mostly sheep in marketing, and I think that we have been. And over the last 2 years, especially, we've started to become more and more of a woke consumer group overall. Like, you care about what that brand supports. You start seeing memes of what brands are supporting certain politicians, and just all of those details are starting to come to light. And so now I definitely feel like we're smarter. And so if it's a celebrity that you know is supporting the overall goals you have for the world, that makes sense. But if it isn't, and you're a little bit confused about why they've been paired with the cannabis brand, you should be asking the brand why. That should be your first question. But I feel like New York just did it with the social equity fund. I'm gonna be real, like, not New York specifically,
right? No,
but the New York media. Everybody's talking about Chris Webber. Well, you talk about Chris Webber, a great basketball player and commentator, and now turned advocate in recent years and investor. You don't talk about a $200 million fund and what to do with it. So the people who've gotten lost in it are the people who actually have the Wall Street experience. They're Black too. And it's like, that's when media is really telling a story, and we feed into it.
Yes, media has been telling like a lot of stories, and you are a former like Fortune 500 buyer and executive, like you started from buyers to executive. You understand that like celebrity endorsements really actually don't increase sales in general.
That is not the right one.
Like you mainly see about 4% increase in sales based on the type of celebrity endorsement. So just seeing that overall, as celebrities like the Jay-Z's of the world, or even the Method Man's, because he has a cannabis brand, are they going to be able to see more than a 4% increase?
I think initially they may see getting put on the map. The celebrity allows them to use their social media. Yeah. And it's not, it's a lot of them. It's Jay-Z, it's Method Man, Be Real, even Burner is a rapper. Then you have your athletes or whatever. All of them have their own platforms. Right. And then they have their own homeboys who have platforms too, or homegirls. So I think it's about that initial stage. They get the ball rolling probably a bit faster, but ultimately what's going to be the staying power and the long term is whether or not it is good flower, whether or not it is a good product, period.
Well, they saying the product is trash because according to California's top 100 sellers of 2021, Jay-Z monogram did not make the list. All those little signs on y'all border didn't do nothing. The only celebrities that were that made the list was Seth Rogen, Willie Nelson.
And Willie Nelson been in the industry for a while, right? So this is something that he's been doing. His brand is old, is not. Monogram is a couple years old, right? Even Seth Rogen has been for the last 7 or 8 years so in the industry, and mostly out of Canada, making moves into the West Coast. But I am waiting for the East Coast to pop up, because the East Coast, even the way we shop for regular clothes, like, yes, there are people who are like, what's the name brand? But we shop in little holes in the wall. It's like, what's the freshest ish, right?
Well, they were saying, Willie Nelson, we know he started a whole hairstyle movement within the industry. Like, he is a cannabis trendsetter outside of the flower, but in the actual hairstyles and styles of clothing and stuff like that. So we knew he was going to make the list. I am surprised to not see Method Man's. His just came out.
To Cal.
Yes. We know you know the name. And so
you are hilarious. I know the name because he's been saying it since the 90s. She tried to shade the old folks, but everybody know that Method Man, along with Wu-Tang, to Cal, coming from Shaolin. You styling out.
All right. So yes. But there is your favorite drink, actually, the Canna.
Just can.
Yeah. Your favorite drink did make the list, and they are actually backed by a lot of celebrities, but you actually like the product. So,
And being backed by celebrity versus frontman. Like Can is backed by Gwyneth Paltrow and Rosario Dawson, but they ain't been in not one commercial or video. The celebrities that they use are actually cult celebrities within the LGBT community. And that is just as powerful. That's why I said it's about which is the right one. When you have somebody like Jay-Z, which by the way, everybody, you can love Jay-Z, but he's untouchable unless you Beyonce, right? Like you don't feel like you know him. And then you look at some of the LGBT celebrities that have been on RuPaul's Drag Race, like they have cult following and they have certain people that stand for them in a way that they'll fight in the streets for these folks, honey. And I'm not saying nobody's fighting in the streets for Jay-Z, but nobody's fighting in the streets for Jay-Z. That's my point.
No, we is not fighting in the streets for Jay-Z. Definitely, you got all this Cali flavor going on with your weed, but New York is online. So, what's happening, hopefully not Monogram, because that is not going to make the
I think Jay-Z is going to have to come to New York and come a whole different kind of way. And this is not just me saying it in predictive. I'm actually giving him advice.
Right.
Because the fact of the matter is he know what it is. There's borough beefs, right? Like New York cannabis is not the same as Cali cannabis. And one thing I will say is that swag is going to be an important part of it. Authentic culture is going to be an important part of it. And we'll be the first people to call Jay-Z out on this Monogram shit. Not because it's not good or it's just even the way it looks, it's too pretentious for New York.
Right. And that's so we're going to see even more celebrities, even more sports niche culture, because the MLB just said, we added CBD to our potential advertisers for the upcoming seasons and stuff. They haven't actually picked a brand or a company, but they are in heavy talks. And, we see that only some athletes are pushing towards it, but for a whole professional industry to be like, oh yeah, if one of these CBD brands wants to have their advertising in 30 of our stadiums, they can.
I think this is a good move by the MLB. I'm excited that my son plays baseball because I don't have to do so much fighting. I think MLB has already for a while not been really, trying to shut people's careers down because of cannabis use. And now this is just one step further to say, A, they know where the money is at, and B, they understand that their players, especially with the type of, repetitive, like he literally, when he pitches, he's doing the same movement over and over again. I worry about his shoulder. I worry about that. And him being able to utilize CBD is an easy win for me as a parent. And I like that the sport he's in, he doesn't have to fight for that validity, and even in the advertisement. So that means if he wants sponsors and things of that nature. And again, this is all professional. The NCAA still don't really want no parts of cannabis. So let's make sure that we are clear on that, whether it's CBD or THC. But MLB is the first one to say, hey, we're not that. And what is it? The Ice Cube's basketball league, the Big Three.
No, I remember.
I kind of feel like they are at least directionally trying to support cannabis being advertised.
Yeah, well, they need all the dollars they could get. And as we talk about all the dollars we could get, and we're going to keep going on, I want to really turn up the heat up in here on these hot topics, because people is trying us, okay? Like, we got to slow down on the money talk, and we got to bring this hot stuff to the table right now, because the amount of propaganda that is going on over guns, and not everyone, I just want everybody to know, everyone's not going to agree on the gun situation. Everyone's not going to agree on how it should happen, whatever. But what we do know is that the federal government talking about they want a medical marijuana registry federally. We do know that they're talking about, guns, be cannabis sparking psychosis in guns and whatever. It's like, what?
Well, Yeah, I'm confused a little bit about why everything is being connected to cannabis, but the hot topic is about Fox News, I guess, being on some BS because they're the main media outlet that's pushing this, but they're not the only one. And the combination of both the federal government wanting to get a list of all the medical cannabis patients in the country, almost like a tracking list in some way, and at the same time, propaganda being pushed right now on the fact that all these mass shootings are related to psychosis induced from cannabis is like a little bit too coincidental. It's very much like War on Drugs 2.0. We've talked about it. And while they're talking about white boys who have done the shooting, and the reality is when we start dealing with law enforcement, it becomes black and brown people who are actually the ones getting over police and the enforcement of the laws written as a result of this ridiculousness. So yes, Fox News is definitely on some BS, but every media outlet that's trying to continue to perpetuate this idea that cannabis causes psychosis. I mean, honestly, we haven't done good research in the United States on cannabis. There are very, very few doctors in the United States that even know we have an endocannabinoid system, let alone understand how cannabis really works in the body. And we've had many, many biased, in my opinion, studies of the past that is always looking for what negative cannabis can do. And we've never really gone out of our way to look at what the positive is, and other countries have, which is why Thailand, which was one of the more ridiculous countries in terms of law, is like, listen, bring your weed here if it's medicine, right? They're very clear on that. Here's the joke on them, though. It's all medicine. And we seem even crazier trying to push a story that apparently the Democrats want us to fear everything else except cannabis, and we should be very fearful of cannabis. What? That is not true. And I'm really kind of over the fact that we continue to have to defend cannabis when we feel like we've moved past some of this and now we're back at it again.
No, I definitely feel like, they are always just trying to look for something to blame. And, Fox News and the other part of their racist party can really just kick the rocks.
That's a joke because Fox News actually was being disowned by parts of the Republican Party. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it and whether to put it in a Republican, Democrat. The reality is the Democrats is not doing that much for cannabis either. We have a Democratic administration in the White House, and there's been no movement. We just talked about that with cannabis regulators.
Yeah, but that old man, he was reading literally off the prompter the part you're not supposed to read, but he ain't read, the shooters got cannabis. So right. We could say that at least about the people in the blue. It's like, what cannabis got to do with these mass shootings? Like, if you don't even want to tell the truth about them, you can actually just not talk about them. There's even more stuff going on that, like, you don't even have to talk about. Like, why you even talk about the mass shootings? They're probably your cousins or something.
You are wild, but I do agree that we don't have to talk about them. That's what I think is so interesting, is that they're creating news, right? It's like, okay, you don't want to talk about the fact that this is happening and probably wouldn't happen if the guns weren't available because these were all gotten legally. But instead you want to try to push the narrative somewhere else. So it has been crazy, and I am watching, and we are talking about it in the cannabis space, but I keep asking the same question over and over again. What are we trying to do about it?
There's a lot of people probably working on things. At the end of the day, we work in the cannabis industry, so I'm not telling you what we're doing about it, but just know it's getting done. Period.
We definitely have to address it at the very least. So that's why we're talking about it. Don't believe what's happening. If you're listening to Fox, if you are, watch any of those news outlets and you see in cannabis, psychosis, mass shootings, all put together in sentences that they're connected,
or
it's not true.
Cannabis and violence, because there was an op-ed that was recently released that was just basically like, cannabis is linked to violent things, like prone to make you be violent. That's
it's
exactly
ridiculous.
What op-ed is, which is just an opinion.
Yes.
And you know what your grandmama said about people's opinions.
Yes. So it's even more ridiculous. And it is very much like Reefer Madness 2.0, War on Drugs. Remember, the Reefer Madness of earlier days in the 1930s, Harry Anslinger essentially created media that said exactly the same thing, that it made darkies think that they were as good as white men. It made white women want to, be with black men. It was all of the fears that we can imagine, and that's what caused it cannabis or marijuana. And he was very slick with it. It was a mastermind approach, and we're still living with it, and they're headed back down that same path.
Oh no, we not. We got the internets, Harry Anslinger, they had like, paper boys and stuff. So
she's saying use the internet, but don't believe everything on the internet, because Fox is on the internet too. That's like the problem for me.
But I was just saying about people banding together, just like the serial killers that are going and mass shooting people, they are banding together on the internet. Just like that, we have to continue to band together on the internet to fight the media at bay,
Yeah. Well, this ain't it, and Fox News, you on some BS. You heard it here.
Yes, for real. And we just had to do that quick little read for you guys in the hot topics because it was just so hot on our timelines. We had to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so what else is popping on the timelines, is Nevada. I mean, it's real hot to go there right now. So I'm not gonna lie, we done been out there so many times. We like, you trying to go in July?
It's still the desert.
No, baby. Like I see you in September, honey. Because like it is super hot.
It's hot in New York too, but it's hot definitely in the desert of Nevada. But apparently Nevada's finally starting to make some moves after what's been a while. I mean, this did legalize in 2016, right?
Yes, it's legalized in 2016. They have medical with real flower. I remember we went to the dispensary and when it was medical, and like we had got Khalifa Kush, I think, at the time. It was like, we're so excited. I don't see Khalifa Kush on there no more, but I mean, like the I would say that cannabis was better
before adult use?
Pre-adult use.
Absolutely.
Nevada weed was slapping.
It was definitely better. I won't know if I'm going to say slapping because it still is not that memorable for me. But I do think that some of my more memorable cannabis is definitely, not from the legal market. That's all I'll say. And but it was better.
We shot both markets.
It was definitely better when it was the medical market, for sure.
Well, anyway. The Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board finally moved forward on these regulations. Now, Nevada has been under really, really large amounts of heat as far as like pre-COVID. We talked about it. They were being sued. They got their whole regulation, people that put in the policies and approved the license. They got that whole thing snatched away. This board, most of these people are new. So, they really are trying to figure out as it goes. And they figured out that basically, they needed cannabis consumption lounges, and so did the people. And so now they released some regulations.
Finally.
Yes. Okay. And some of the regulations, because it seems like that's what everyone's waiting for, silent drum roll. There's no alcohol inside of the lounges, right? And let's just remember, it's called cannabis consumption lounges. So I guess y'all don't want a gym. I guess y'all don't want a pool house or a spa, whatever. Y'all just want a lounge. That's all. That's all we want to do with weed, cannabis. Food can be served, so you can eat. Still not sure if you can eat the cannabis in it, but more to come. Secondhand smoke from consumption rooms must be limited. So you could go die in a casino with the secondhand smoke from that. You can even bring the secondhand smoke in the clubs in the casino, but
from cigarettes.
Cigarettes in the casino allows. If you ever been in Nevada, you could smoke anywhere in the casinos. Cigarettes, not vape and not cannabis. But in their cannabis consumption lounges, they can't have any, like, you gotta limit your secondhand smoke. So I guess you gotta have a smoke detector up in there or something.
I'm sure it's all about the environmental aspects. And maybe, here's the thing, casinos have done a really, really, really good job in Nevada to lobby the various gaming boards and the like to ensure that they are always able to keep people smoking and drinking inside. Right. And so what we have now is just a different setup. It's not the people who own casinos who did this lobbying. It's a whole different group. And so that doesn't surprise me. I'm just happy that there's
some people
something.
that own casinos on the road and Cannabis.
Yes, but it's by and large not the same lobbying group that helped establish this. And that's the part that you have to understand, is that the
money is the same,
comes from lobbying. And right now, I do think that everybody is worried about what the clean air will be like, because they're also assuming that the only thing you can do in a consumption lounge, like I guess a cigar lounge, is smoke. But the difference is cannabis isn't just, isn't like a cigar. A cigar, you can only smoke it. Cannabis has so many ways that you can ingest it. And I am annoyed that we still are making laws and regulations limiting the way we consume. It should just be called on-site consumption. Who made it a lounge? Why does it have to be a lounge? You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the things that I constantly I'm asking myself all the time. And when we talk about it in the city of Portland and we talk about other places that I've testified, I make it very clear that this is something that we need to stop limiting the way people can envision on-site consumption. On-site consumption is a much broader thing than just smoking a joint inside. Now, don't get me wrong, that's an important part of the community of cannabis. And the fact that we wait till the last licensing structure piece of it to be on-site consumption, we're wasting a lot of money. And we're also encouraging people to operate in the gray because they're already operating that way. Cannabis is a very community-driven consumption experience. One way or another, whether you at the spa, whether you at a workspace, or whether you at a lounge.
That is for sure. And, they really just want people not to be like over consuming. So they want warning labels for like, don't over consume. They are looking at ride shares. They know that this is something that they want people to do, and they want people to spend their money. They're even looking at, a no-tow policy. So if you get too high and you don't want to drive home, which I never really seen too much of this in a lot of drinking things, is you can leave your vehicle, go home overnight, and then come back if you're too high. Even though the people I know that smoke at night smoke in the morning too, so I don't get it. But, it's okay.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh hard on that, but because you're right. But also, where I've seen these in very small towns where they know the teenagers are drinking. And so this is yet again the government, I feel, overstepping. If I'm old enough to carry a gun and concealed at that and use it whenever, because that's what the law is saying I'm able to do, then why are you trying to police me to this degree on my ability to be a responsible adult user? Nobody's doing that for old people who are drinking, right? So it's not like we have just all these ride shares set up outside every single casino, ensuring like it's the safest experience ever. Yes, what happens in Vegas stay in Vegas? Yes, but a lot of crazy happens in Vegas on just alcohol alone, and nobody's doing anything to help support like people figuring that out. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I do feel like where I've seen it most actionable is when you're in a small town and you have your high schoolers are drinking. It's the football players, it's the post games, it's those experiences. So yeah, they know they can leave their car, they know they can, even in college towns, right? And in Princeton, there are ride shares, for example, because it's understanding you have underage people who might not be the most responsible, doing things that could cost them their lives and other people's lives. But when it comes to cannabis, I also feel like we really don't understand the science enough for us to be even making some of these decisions. I'm glad it's in regulation and it's not in law. because when we put things in law, it's hard to change them. It also helps feed in the stereotypes and perpetuate them further. With regulation, I like that they're at least attempting to say, hey, we want a good community, period. And so I can't fault them on it, but I do give a side eye whenever there's way more policing of some sort. In this case, it's light policing, but we don't do that in other places. And it's so like stark of a contrast. This is the work we should be doing around how people getting their guns.
Well, I don't know, but what I do know is that there will be, their application fee starts at $10,000 if you're independent lounge, or if you are already an existing dispensary or cannabis adjacent actual thing, you will be paying around $100,000. So, they also are capping licenses. So, good luck. May the force be with you.
I think we should definitely follow up on this. I'm glad it is happening. I know we've been to a couple of lounges in Cali and in Nevada as they were like more unofficially open, because wasn't Nuvo in Nevada?
Yeah.
But that was on a Native American
so
land.
The Native American land is the first consumption thing, and they did this whole high times thing during BizCon, always dating how long we've been in the industry, but
it wasn't technically licensed.
Yes, but it was under the tribal law.
Gotcha.
So tribal law was different. I mean, Nuvo was also the first one with the drive-through, 24 hours. They did everything, one-stop shop cannabis place. And they even had remember the grounds outside where they turned everything into something pretty cool. So Nuvo was the first. They probably was seeing how much money Nuvo was making, because people would drive all the way out there to go get some cannabis and then drive back to where they, and be done. Because you could go through the drive-through, you go in the store, you could go sit. There was a whole experience. And so I'm really curious. I know a lot of companies that were waiting on these consumption lounges to drop that were not cannabis at all. They were cannabis. I would say, as you have a smoking area, they're cannabis adjacent.
Yes.
So if you have hookah and party, whatever, they still was adjacent to cannabis. So now they're the ones that you really got to watch out for in cannabis. Okay.
I do agree. I mean, I think that everybody's trying to figure out what their play is. And if you're already doing hookah and there's now consumption on site, then that is an obvious play. So that doesn't sound crazy to me, but it is something that I do think that we have to constantly be aware of. Who's the people who've been fighting for legalization? Who cares about patients? Because to be honest, on-site consumption is an equity issue. If you live in public housing or you don't own your space and your landlord is like, you can't smoke, that otherwise is grounds for terminating your lease, all of the above, those are things that generally poorer people of color, they don't have that control. And so if you don't have that control, then where do you consume? On the street. And when I'm saying on the street, I'm talking about you just literally maybe on your block. But guess what? Many jurisdictions, Portland is one of them, Oregon is one of them, public consumption is against the law. So they put you between a rock and a hard place. DC is crazy because it is still 8 times more likely that a Black person is going to be stopped and given a citation for on-site for consumption on the street because of the public consumption rules.
That sucks. But one of my favorite fun fast facts to tell people in because people are like, oh, you work in the cannabis industry, and I'm like, yes. And so they're like, well, what you know about cannabis? And so one of my favorite fun facts is that New York State is one of the only states that allows you to, without any restriction, light your cannabis up same place cigarettes are lit up.
That's an easy way to solve it.
Period. No California. I don't care if you smoke a blunt outside the airport in California, bro. If the police wanted to mess with you that day, you're going.
They could have. And I mean, really, it would just be a ticket. But the fact is, tickets add up.
Well, no, I'm saying you're not going anywhere, but you're just going to have to deal with them.
Right.
You don't have to. You ain't going to have to deal with nothing if you're allowed to smoke cigarettes in that same place in New York. Period.
Yes, it doesn't mean that people don't try you, because trust and believe I have been tried in New York, and thankfully I know the law, because I'd be like, excuse me, and I'm like, well, how do you know? Because I helped get this legalized here. But that is something we're working on in the city of Portland. I brought over that precedent. I was talking about it just the last couple of weeks with our cannabis policy oversight team, that basically public consumption leaves you in a rock and a hard place, especially when you don't have a power over whether you can consume in your house or not. Sometimes that people just ignore that is a real privilege. And when I'm in Portland and I want to follow every rule because I'm a regulator, I struggle unless I'm at a place where I have had an Airbnb or somehow miraculously got a hotel that's going to allow me to have some level of on-site consumption. And guess what? It ain't that many of them. So what are my choices? I could go outside and get a ticket, which would be embarrassing. And guess what? I would be targeted because I'm Black. And that's still a problem in Portland. And the other possibility is maybe doing it in a car. But if I'm in the driver's seat, I can get a ticket as well. I have to literally be parked maybe and in the back seat, and that might not get me a ticket because it's still a vehicle. So I just think in general, there's the canophobia, the fear of cannabis, and wanting to continue to hide it. Most states put this law in. And honey, guess what? Whether I'm doing it behind a fence or not, you're going to be able to smell that it ain't a cigarette. Okay?
I also can maybe smell you.
Yes.
You know, sometimes some of these people be walking ashtrays that smell like a walking hookah lounge.
Yes.
But talking about, oh, what's that smell? Something you wish you was smoking.
Instead of what you're currently doing. Mm-hmm. I do like the cigarette as just a blanket, but eventually we will get to a point where Clean Air Act and our environmental goals and laws will shift, and we'll start seeing cigarettes taken. Like there are places like the park can't smoke at all.
Oh yeah, New York.
You know what I mean? New York has definitely gotten to that point. So it's not like whip it out anywhere. But wherever there's somebody smoking a cigarette or you seeing butts on the floor, that's usually the first place. So I'm tapping out my pipe, ready to pack it up again to say, okay, this must be where I can smoke.
Yes, and so that is your New York cannabis fast fact. And we may have some New York cannabis fast facts, but we need to go head all over to the West Coast in my Snoop Dogg, Dr. J, whatever.
Dr. Dre.
Yes, I was about to call Dr. J.
That's you being really an East Coast girl and more of a sports girl, I guess, than anybody's West Coast music.
My bad, y'all. I'm young.
She's like, this is old folks.
You know, I'm young enough. I was
Dr.
born
J,
in the
Dr. Dre.
I know he did something with the chronic, and it was like this whole thing. But my bad. Anyway, so let's get into the California chronic. Okay, and things have been very interesting in California lately. We know that California is really, really expensive. So expensive. Everything is expensive. Well, cannabis may actually have some relief. So that's exciting to hear.
Golf clap for Cali. But real shout out to Supernova Women, because the advocates are the ones pushing. As much as we want to give credit to the government, it's like the government won't do it unless they called out. But those are the women calling them out. So I wanted to shout them out.
Yes. Yeah. We definitely have to shout them out, because I've seen all the lobbying days. I've seen all the information that they were giving out to really educate folks. Because a lot of people, unless you're on the ground, in the trenches of what's happening in cannabis, you have no idea.
You have no idea, and you're enjoying the privileges of the work that people are literally blood, sweat, and tears. They've definitely marched on the Capitol multiple times in this last year alone around this particular topic. So that's why I'm like, no, they're doing the work, and they don't stop, and we can't stop, won't stop. We got to keep going.
And won't stop.
Yes.
Ooh. So in California, basically, the governor released his budget. And in his budget, he is allowing some relief for the cannabis industry. So he is giving grants to cannabis social equity licenses. So there'll be a social justice for fund, and that was something that never really, like, they did have it, but it's a little bit different this time.
It is, but not really. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what is that different. I see the biggest story around the tax part of it, but all of the cannabis tax revenue, when taken into account, it isn't being put back into the communities as it should in California. So anytime we hear that there's more being put into these grants, the better. But Cali was one of those states, unlike New York, unlike Illinois, where they set, a certain percentage of cannabis tax revenue that has to be. Cali is up to the governor's discretion because it's going right into the general fund. And so in prior years, jurisdictions were given cash or millions of dollars that they then get to turn around into grant programs. Under Cat Packer, for example, in Los Angeles, they did their version of seed. We have seed in the city of Portland. We were first. But what I love about theirs is it's social equity entrepreneur development. And so it is specifically for licenses, and that's not necessarily what our program is for. And it's been a good program. The challenge I'm having is still not enough money. I'm sorry.
Well, the government is real tight with their money. But right now, if you've been to Cali, basically you're paying a retail tax of 15% plus, so that's not the only percent. You're paying the general tax of 7.25, which is just the state tax. And then they also have bag taxes in California. So, bring your own bag. You don't get packaging, right? Like, you still gotta buy, not bring back your actual jar. It's just bring your own bag so you can put it in, because they will charge you that little 10 cents for that little thing. And so that's really, really expensive. And that's just on the actual retailer, like the customer, sorry. And then there's also a large tax that happens on each part of the supply chain. And so that is eating up all the coins in the industry, whether you're a consumer where, you go in for this eighth and then you basically pay for half or a quarter, depending on, what you get. But what kind of eighth you get. If you get top shelf, you definitely paying half prices. If you getting some good shelf, you gonna pay quarter prices.
You're absolutely right about that. It's everybody's feeling it, and people shop less, of course, because it's more expensive. If you're going to go to shelf and you're like, all of these extra taxes add up to almost a third addition to your whole overall what you pay for just the weed itself, you stop wanting to shop that. Furthermore, it could be very dry weed, or the product is not that great. It was harvested 2 years ago. The list goes on. I'm not saying that every market is like that. Like
California specifically.
We're talking about Cali, but we're not talking about every single dispensary, because what I found was that was not the case when I went to Josephine and Billy's. That was not the case when I went to the Gorilla RX dispensary. So those are Black woman-owned dispensaries, and I do think we are aware of what the challenges are for people from our community wanting to make that crossover. And if you thinking you're getting good weed just because the price is so high, that's actually been the opposite of what Cali has had. Now, that's if you're a consumer. It's a very frustrating world to be a consumer in Cali. You have dry spots, and you didn't also have this ridiculous markup because the people are trying to get their money back through the supply chain, especially the cultivators. You also start finding that there's a lot of homogenous growing. So you got the same 8 strains, and I don't like that. It's such a big market, and yes, it is by region, but if I'm in Oakland, like literally I go from dispensary to dispensary and everybody's growing the same ish. And the reason I think has a lot to do with the cultivation taxes that exist.
cultivation taxes that exist, a lot of white labeling. And if everybody buys their thing from the same nursery, the nursery gets to dictate what's the flavor of the season. And so I definitely hear you. So everyone's probably like, well, what do the people in the industry pay? So from some of my research that I saw, basically, you can pay anywhere from $2 $2 on a joint in taxes as the person that's selling the actual joint.
The wholesaler?
The wholesaler. So you could pay as small as joints, because some people just only do pre-rolls, only do joints. And then you are looking at around $161 of taxes per pound of cannabis. Which does add up if you have 50 pounds or 100 pounds that you're trying to load off.
Right. Mm-hmm. And this is, again, flower is definitely the prevailing starting point. Obviously, it's a plant. Mm-hmm. And so many of the taxes start there. But then it just builds as it keeps going. And then there's also a lot of requirements related to packaging. Mm-hmm. Once you get into the manufacturing, I'm not that excited about New York either, because New York's taxing structure is going to include tax on THC. I don't think that Cali has a tax on the THC.
They do not have the tax on THC, but remember, their taxes go up over time. So this year they were supposed to get an increase. That's why there was
all this fighting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Because you're really, the cultivation is eating a lot of the tax money. Yes, we're eating it with the cent tax and the general retail tax and stuff, but they're eating it per pound dry flower, because a lot of it starts at the flower, whether we are getting into processing or we're getting into tropicals, anything, there is nothing that does not start with the seed in cannabis unless you take it from the seed, like hemp seed oil.
Right. And that's not happening in the marijuana market.
Hopefully not.
It's not. I think that it could.
According to Delta 8, maybe.
Possibly, but there's no cannabinoids in the seed. So we're not seeing in the marijuana market those things that are found, which is really omega fatty acids. But what I will say is I'm happy to hear that there is some relief, because this is taxation without representation, in my opinion. Not only are very small amounts of the cannabis tax revenue really going back into communities most harmed, is small on the order of how much money is being spent on enforcement. The governor's budget still has a lot of money for police. And so to me, I feel like it is important for the community to keep pushing back. This isn't going to be the last fight. It's right now. They have made this okay for right now, and you feel like you've got a little bit of a win. But I actually think it's going to be every few years kind of thing to push back, because the structure wasn't good to begin with.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that, because everyone's like, well, how did we get here? Well, Prop 64, they did not do the Arizona method, is what I call it, where it's like, okay, we know we want to legalize, but this bill sucks. Come back again. And they come back again. Oh, this bill sucks. Come back again. And these are the people voting on it, because we know that a lot of the cannabis bills that came through back then, they were voted on by the people. And so nobody really analyzed what Prop 64 actually was asking with the taxes.
They did, and here's the challenge.
Really?
Yes. We have to tell the truth about what has actually happened. There were a lot of members of the advocacy community that did not want to support Prop 64. There were people getting bullied into supporting. You have some of well-known, very, very well-known. You do not want us to put you on blast. Well-known activists now that help lead people down this path off the cliff. They cared more about legalizing than they did about the details. And that's why California didn't legalize with equity in mind, didn't legalize with small businesses in mind. It legalized with the whole other political machine in mind, just to legalize. And we've got to stop being thankful just for legalization if it's whack. because all it does is set up frameworks that we have to take all this time to undo and break and only rebuild. Colorado is very similar, if you ask me. And so these newer markets that are coming on, the people like New York who wanted to hold the line, because that's best we believe there were people coming over from Cali in 2018 wanting us to give away everything but freaking shirts on our back to Governor Cuomo in order to just legalize. But what would that have been? And what would that be for the federal frameworks that we discussed? Thank God for New York. And New York hasn't even done anything yet. It just passed a law that at least the federal government has to pay some attention to because it's such a big market. But if we left it up to Cali, Prop 64, and all these other things, we'd be seeing crazy conversations at the federal level. As is, Prop 64 is why the tax conversation at the federal level is a whack one now. So yes, I'm being real when I say when we look back, there were plenty of advocates. I remember as I'm entering this market at the time, people basically telling me why you shouldn't support Prop 64, but they were being blackballed, they were being hazed and or bullied. I'm glad nobody brought that over to us, because I mean, what I would love to do to a bully, especially in the cannabis space, but a lot of that has changed over time, and part of it is we just got to call people out for what it is. But a lot of well-known people of color who, like right now, want to be the queens and kings of diversity they were part of this demise, if you ask me.
Sorry.
You laughing?
You just read them. Well, no, because I forgot. Like, I mean,
remember,
we have been in the industry for a really long time.
We gotta remember.
And that was the early days. I was high as a kite for real. Trying to figure out dosage. I'm like, oh, you sure this is 5 milligrams? Oh, you meant 50. Oh, okay. Well, I don't think this event is gonna have me here tonight. But yeah, so please forgive me, you guys. But you just read them for filth. I'm just saying, when you call it out, I'm like, you know what? You're right. That person did have. Oh yeah. Y'all want to know? Y'all gonna have to take me to a meal if y'all want to know the name.
You're hilarious. Well, also, we're not messy, but we are kind of, sort of. We could.
I'm mixy, not messy.
Okay. Well, I'm not messy. I'm messy when I need to be, and I feel like it's about what I know as almost like when is the right time to use that weapon. Thankfully, ain't nobody really come for me, so I don't have to send for them, right? And that's really what it is, in my opinion. At this point, though, we should be honest with each other and say, we knew, and there were many of us who wanted to be vocal about it, but the pushback was, we just need to legalize. And all I'm going to say is, I'm glad I'm from New York. That's all.
Right. They was like, we just need to legalize. We can fix it later.
No, you can't.
That is like a trap. That is a trap. That is a governmental trap to just get your money. Because really, the government just wanted the money. That's all they wanted. They didn't care about whether you was a producer or a consumer. Give me the coin, honey. And that's all. That's what they've been doing. They've been cashing in, and it took them a very long time to release some of these reins. And so we will tell you guys more about it. But yeah, I'm glad we had to break that down, because that was really getting to me. The California, seeing all these things about people being all excited and stuff, and not really understanding why they're excited.
Well, I think people realize that Cali has made mistakes, and our mature markets have made mistakes. I'm the first one to say it. I think with Oregon, their biggest mistake is not taking along health professionals. I think Cali and Colorado didn't either, but they at least had a more robust medical program. Oregon, the Constitution was changed to say treat cannabis like medicine, and it still doesn't happen. The Oregon physician boards are harassing people. So we've got to learn from the mistakes. And Washington State was a real mistake with how high they put their taxes, because they really thought that tourist was going to be like, when I'm coming to visit Seattle, I'm going to spend $100 on an eighth.
Right.
We're not like. Yeah, no, we're not stupid. And the other thing is, people forget that, I guess they think really that non-cannabis users are the buyers, who are the consumers. And it's actually the first movers in a legal market, hands down, are still people who are using cannabis.
Regular.
Period. And so this whole belief that you're getting these newbies in there, you get in people who are very skeptical on the percentage of THC you report in, and skeptical on the price.
And a lot of the THC and terpenes and stuff. But you guys, we gotta go because it's Saturday. You know, your girl gotta get lit. And we have even more information in the description box that will really, really tell you guys like what else does this actually help? Because they did some other things besides the taxes as well, like help figure out having a union or not having a union. You know, your girl was not about to pronounce that word. And
unionization.
Right. And there's a whole 42-page study about taxes, how it happened, how is it going. They talk about it from the cultivation level, the processor level, the dispensary level, the distributor level, and the consumer level. And this is a 42-page document. So I'm gonna send that to y'all to do your own investigation on that. And yes, it will be in the description box of the actual video.
Yes, but also we got to come back to it because one of the things I love always is you can announce something, but what's the effect? How does it impact the market? And so we need to come back to figure out whether it will impact the market or not. And I'm not necessarily convinced that this is enough relief, but it's a start. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And as always, you can follow us on she_blaze on IG. You can watch us Saturday mornings live on Facebook Live. Listen anytime. Okay. On Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can hear podcasts, you can hear us. Yay. YouTube too. Mm-hmm. And feel free to always follow me if I let you follow me at Cannabis Socialite on IG because up my page private, you wish.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am open at like a book and you can follow me on Twitter and IG at Deshita Dawson. You did make your page private.
I shows did lurking loose. I know they're lurking for me. Listen, if you really want to see what I'm doing, follow She Blaze. Don't be following Cannabis Socialite because you can't even handle this heat.
Oh my God. What are we going to do with her? Oh my goodness. Well, as always, it's always good to be back. I can't believe it. We're season 6, episode 3. We're going to hit our 100th episode this season. So y'all better rock with us. It's time for folks to come back to our live on Saturdays.
Y'all hear that? She's just trying to give me stuff to do, y'all. Like, I just be trying to be cute, do my little quick Saturday boop boop boop, so I can go out in the street, party outside, do my little farewell tour, and you like trying to do the most.
I don't know what she's farewelling, but what I will say is that we are here for being back in New York and being live in person. So there's going to be some secret locations. Y'all better listen and pay attention because if you are in New York and you want to see us in person, it's going to happen this season many times. So with that being said, maybe it is more work, but I'm here for it. We have to pass up. We have to give all the information that we can give.
Y'all just follow and keep along. Just follow and keep along, you guys. Have a great Saturday.
Enjoy your Saturday. Bye.